how we go. It'd be lovely to hear a
Yeah.
little bit more your journey.
Yes, definitely. I'm feeling the same, so we're definitely in vibration with that.
Right. And you've had plenty going on from what I and have been for
Yeah.
I assume right from the very start of when you were little, from the sounds of it.
Yes, I just really wanted to share my story a little bit because I thought you might find it interesting. I reached out to you, I think, about 7 years ago when you were writing The
Wow.
New Human. And I just want to give a little background, and I'm going to share some screens because I think you might find this quite interesting. I'm still finding it quite interesting what's been happening to me. Um, but I'll give you a little history of that and show some of my work and my art and light language and speak a little bit, just kind of, I just felt it was time. So where do I begin? There's so much. So I'll tell you a little bit about my background. So I've been connecting with star people all my life. Um, and I'll talk a little bit about that experience later. Um, and my mom was an artist, and she was a twin, so she was very telepathic. And I used to telepath with her and her sister. I didn't really talk until I was about, maybe 9 or 10. People thought I was mute.
Right.
Yeah, and but I was very much in another world. I feel like I came in completely awake, aware. I knew what was going on. This has happened all my life, and I had these really profound experiences when I was a kid, all through my life. And I can definitely relate to a lot of people that are communicating with you. It's challenging to be here, and through this whole process, really in the last really magnified the last 10 years, I got very clear about where this information came from, why I was given this mission, which is a pretty big one. I mentioned it to you in the email and the things that you've seen, all these downloads that have happened to me. I mean, it's really, really profound, but I just felt, it's time to really come out of my spiritual closet fully and
Mm.
share all this work. I mean, it's voluminous. My friend said that I was writing the encyclopedia, the cosmic encyclopedia. I think I tapped into the Akashic or something. It's pretty amazing. So very quickly, so when I was a kid, I had these really profound experiences. I have a screen that I can talk through a little bit, but when I was born, I had chemical pneumonia when I was between 6 months and a year. And I was in the hospital most of the time, back and forth. And I have very profound memories when this happens. And a woman that works with Arcturians, which I'm also very connected to Arcturian energy, said this is when they would take you on the ship. This is when they would come visit you and teach you things. So I was very connected to my family, but I felt like I was always, from some other place. And just very profound memories that were very conscious all my life. And then when I was between 4 and 7, I started getting grand mal seizures. So I would black out, fall on the floor, hit my head, many times. I was thrown in a bath of like a shock treatment
Wow.
of rubbing alcohol and ice cubes because that's what the doctors told you were supposed to do at that time. It was pretty crazy. And but when I would do this, I knew that this is when I would go.
Yeah.
So really, really profound things happen. So I visit this Arcturian starship that I've been shown is actually my ship, or I'm connected directly to it, my family. And I go, even now, I go up and down. And it's really, really profound. I'm walking in different rooms. There's a room where I walk in, and my human self. What has actually happened to me is I've learned how to bilocate. So I'm here in
Mm.
the physical, but it's like walking in dream time, and I can somehow split my left-right brain to be able to have this experience. And so I'll go in this one room where there are star children, you know, um, and human children and guides, elders that are showing them things. And it's almost like I'm reporting back to them what's going on in the field here. And so I telepath with them, and there's a wall where I project these thoughts, and they can see it, and it's like an immediate download. It's very interesting. It's biological, but it feels
Mm,
technological. So it's the
mm,
blend, and
mm,
and I speak in symbols. So and I teach them things about Earth. They teach me things about whatever is going on. It's almost like a round table, like the
mm,
Knights of the Round Table were collectively getting together like a council, and the children are the teachers. So I know you do a lot of work with Star Kids. I've gotten incredible amounts of information about Star Children, what they're
mm,
doing, what's happening now, and where we're going with this. So anyway, so these children, we all kind of blend the information, and then I go back and do other things. There's also another room that I go to that's like a healing chamber, where there's a bed and my body is lying there in another dimension, and I see these Arcturians over me, healing me and recalibrating me with their hands, and retune the frequency so that I can come back down here. So I think I'm living more up there than here,
right.
but I'm very conscious here.
Yeah.
So while this is happening, I mean, all this is just phenomenal to me still. I can go outside of my body, and I stand next to them, and they teach me what they're doing. They teach me about the human genomes. They teach me about how to move energy in my body. And they're giving me tips about how to manage this frequency. Often they infuse this like blue etheric energy that has happened also. I'll tell you about that in a minute. When I was on a vision quest, they came and they were moving this energy in my body, and I was asking, well, this is my body, and they said your higher self gave us permission to do this. And
Mm,
they said it's not like an implant, but what we're doing is fusing a certain kind of energy in your genes, your DNA, to be able to connect with us more. So it's kind of like a radio tower or something like that.
yeah. Yeah.
And also to calibrate my body so I can function here. So anyway, there's that. There's another room that I go to, which is like a portal room where it's almost like, when you go to the eye doctor and they do the vision checks with the different
Yeah.
lenses. It's like I can pull out a portal, like a circular portal, and travel through it. So they're teaching me how to go to different dimensional places, different star systems, that kind of thing. And I'm doing this very consciously. I'm like, oh, sometimes this even happens when I'm fully awake.
Right.
So I'm going in and out of these states. And there's another room that's fascinating. It's a huge wall. It feels like we're in this little bubble, but inside it's hundreds of miles long, and it's a wall of symbols. So I've
Mm,
worked with symbols. Like I mentioned, my mom was an artist, and I've written and drawn symbols in my artwork. I'll show you even when I was little. And this wall is like a gold grid, completely full, top to bottom, of these symbols that are like um, polygonal shapes. And
mm,
I have learned how to put my hand on it, pull it out, rotate it. I can even do this with my mind and read the symbol, but it's like multidimensional.
mm,
So um, I'm learning. They're teaching me how to pull different symbols out and connect them. So some of the symbols they explain um, are like thought forms, like they're
mm,
archiving all this stuff. It's like the Akashic for emotions, thought forms, energy. Some
mm,
are maps of the universe, some are blueprints for planetary systems, some are languages. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And so, what I'm being shown, like they come in this dimension, I've seen them, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but they show me that somehow I'm taking that and bringing it down here. Like somehow
mm,
I'm making this physical through my artwork and through
mm,
my other multidimensional work. So all that is happening up there, and I'm starting to mirror it. So let's see what else can I say. Where do I begin? So also when I was a child, when I was about 3, I still remember being in diapers, and I went to our front yard, which was all grass, and I was instructed, I've had voices and visions. I was instructed to lie down and put my hands out like this. And all of a sudden, fully conscious, I remember this moment. I was seeing light going back and forth between my hands and around my body. So I'm
Mm.
lying down on the ground around my body in the earth, like circulating my body. And then I felt a big being of light, which I have found out later, I was told is one of the guides that I work with. Who it was like lying down, and I could just see this beam of light all the way up to the heavens. It was like a bar. And I heard, they said, in your 20s and 30s, your life is going to be really difficult and challenging. And in your 40s and 50s, you'll understand what your mission is. So, just remember this, retain it, will be with you, and go play. Just forget about all this. And I remember
Mm.
standing up even at 3, because I could look down and see my body, and I didn't know how to function. A lot of times when people say they come back in the body, I was like backwards. So
Yeah.
I remember playing with my girlfriend, my little friend, and watching her, like, what do 3-year-old humans do? Like, how do they move their body? And so I slowly started to get back into that. But I have had really, really profound experiences. We have some common friends, the Pork and Bean Show guys, who I love. I love those guys.
Mhm.
So let's see. So I've connected with Sasquatch extensively. When I was little, we'd go hiking. I'm now in Wisconsin, in this area called the Driftless region in southwest Wisconsin, where it's like Switzerland. It's very hilly, but very ancient land because the glaciers didn't
Yeah.
come through.
Mm.
And I feel very connected to this land. I actually grew up 2 hours south of here in Illinois. And then I go back and forth between Sedona, et cetera, et cetera. And what happened to me was, um, I'll tell you a couple things about the Sasquatch. So I would go out in the forest. We'd come up here a lot, or I'd go to camp up here. And I would see them, feel them, hear them. The trees would rustle, really,
Mm.
really profound things. And I would see them in front of me, and they'd shapeshift. And it was kind of like they were checking me out. And I found out later that this is my family. This is some very interesting connection. I don't really talk about this often, but um, an indigenous chief that I'll mention in a minute told me that I was genetically related to them. So this is one of the reasons why there's this connection. Then I was also told by him and 2 other indigenous elders and another person that I was Arcturian. Well, I didn't know anything about that. And then all of a sudden something clicked on, and I did some research and figured things out, and I think this is one of the things I was shown, is that we're all coded from many star seeds, a big group of star seeds. Everybody's carrying this
Mm.
within their genetics, and some people are a little bit more dominant. It's like a dominant gene. And so I was shown my Arcturian side is completely turned on, but I'm not a hybrid. Like, I wasn't blended or born or created off planet, that kind of thing. I'm shown that I was born from human parents, but the spirit that came in predominantly was my Arcturian self. And it's taken me, I'm almost 60, and it's taken this long to figure out this, relationship, of
Mm.
myself. So I'm a star person. Um, and I know you are. And then, people are starting to actualize this.
Mm.
When they talk about being star seeds, we're actually star people that are remembering that here. So that's
Yeah.
a whole other thing that I talk about in my work. But what happened was my mom was an artist, and I would tell her, Mom, I see little people. And she was very, very open. She never shut me down. And she says, go paint them. Just go paint
Mm.
them. And she would say, she taught me many techniques, but really it was more like a synesthetic
Yeah.
way of looking at the world. And she just let me be, like, just really let me be. And I would spend hours visioning. I call it visioning, going in and out of dimensions, having these really, really phenomenal experiences. This was amazing, but it was very, very hard for me to integrate into society. I just didn't fit, especially in a small Midwestern town.
Mm.
So when I was maybe 2 to 10, between 2 and 10, these star people would come and visit me. And usually, ironically, it would happen around a full moon. So I think there's something about the portal opening at that time or something. And I would be lying in bed and I would see them come through my wall and
Mm.
come around my bed. And they were like little children. They didn't look like grays or, a lot of times Arcturians, there's a certain look that people depict them as. And I'm
Mm.
sure, as you know, there's all different calibers within each of these star systems. So some look more human, some look more whatever. And but they or maybe they transform to make me feel more comfortable. And they
Mm.
would come around my bed. And I used to collect these stuffed animals. I had hundreds of them on my bed. Those were my friends. I was very much a loner. And they would come into the stuffed animals and they would start moving.
Mm.
And I would have that kind of experience. So they talked to me in a way that was comfortable. And what happened, even when I was little, was I can look at an object and it starts moving. So I'm
Mm.
seeing another dimensional existence. I was dyslexic most of my life. When I would read a book, the words would become multidimensional. They'd float up off the page, they'd spin, they became symbolic. I was going in other worlds. When I'd hold antiques, I could hear voices and like a lot of the psychic stuff that I was really interested in, but didn't really
Mm.
understand at the time. So let's see what else. So long story short, I have 3 older sisters in New York City. So I went to high school nearby there and kind of grew up in New York. Um, one of my sisters was working at a gallery that represented Andy Warhol, so I was very much in this club scene, underground scene, the art world, the social stuff.
Mm.
And then I ended up living there. I was living in New York and Brooklyn, and started doing website design. Of course, I was coding. I was one of the first people on the internet, really, really early on. I taught myself everything. I'm completely self-taught with all these tech tools. I just look at it and pick it up. It was the same when I was doing sports when I was a kid. If you showed me how to, swing a bat or a tennis ball or, swim or something, I just did it.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I had this like superhuman strength. Like I could climb up to the tree. I was carrying my dad around the house when I was 7. Like just, I was a weird kid, weird kid. And so anyway, and I'm sure that created a lot of friction for people. I was always bullied, always teased. Uh, most of my friends, I was telling my friend the other day, were people that had disabilities. I loved them because they were fun. I had
Mm.
one of my best friends had a hydrocephalic head and
Oh.
a metal claw, and my other friend had 3 fingers, which probably felt very familiar to me.
Mm.
But I was just kind of off in my little world, and people would pick on me all the time, and I just ignored it. But it was very, very hard to deal with this. I never told anybody any of this stuff, and even until recently. Anyway, so I was in New York, and still I was painting. I'm an artist. I went to a big art school, and then always was interested in multimedia stuff. So sound
Mm.
technology, performances, and everything. I was trying to put it all together, but it just didn't make sense. But I was dabbling in all this stuff. And then I started programming and worked at all these hundreds of different agencies, marketing, communications, even a Swiss bank, surprisingly, but the website, the internet side. And I just couldn't find my place and find my people. I was social. I got more social at that time, but there was still another calling, and I kept dreaming about these symbols. I had hundreds of journals, even when I was 7, 10, 15, writing symbols, codes, diagrams, just scripting stuff over and over and over again, and painting them in my painting. And I'll show you some of those. But I saw two symbols that activated something for me. One was the flower of life, but a different version. It wasn't the
Right.
known version. It's like a
Yeah.
I think more ancient, something behind it.
Mm.
And I also saw the triskelion, which I use in my logo. The three spinners out of a triangle. And I went to this bookstore and said, I really need to know what these symbols are. And they gave me some information. All of a sudden, from being totally dyslexic, I started absorbing everything. I read everything. I would go to I call it the Barnes and Noble library, sit in the corner and just flip through things so fast, page, 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 like this. And I learned how to put my hand on the book and just,
Yeah.
download it or to hold it on my head. A lot of times I'll sleep with books underneath my pillow and wake up it's like I understand the whole concept. It's not just the words. It's like a bigger. So my brain is always seeing things completed, like I'm seeing in the future. Like even when I've been writing all these books I was telling you about, I already saw them all done, and then I worked backwards. It's like that movie Arrival. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's amazing
Yeah.
how she visioned in the future the book, and then she kind of worked backwards. That's what's happened to me. So I was looking at symbols online, came across this symbol I immediately recognized, that was brought in by this Lakota chief named Chief Golden Light Eagle. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But I said to my daughter, I don't know, we have to meet this chief. And he was doing a gathering. He did these Star Knowledge conferences for about 25 years. Pretty much everybody in the New Age community spoke there. And it was an amazing gathering of elders, indigenous elders and star people talking about Knights Templar, Sasquatch, the whales, kind of everything. And I just knew it felt right. So we flew out to Palm Springs in the middle of the desert and went to this conference, and I saw this chief and had some really profound immediate connections with him. We looked at each other and it was like we had known each other for many, many years, more familial than my family. And he was doing a ceremony with somebody, and I happened to take my camera and take a picture of the sky, and there was like an upside down eagle and this, what I call a pashat, like a Syrian lion, very, very distinct characters in the sky. And I was very shy. He was in all his regalia, and I went over and said, "Excuse me, Chief, I'd like to show you this picture." And he goes, "Wait a minute." And he looks at his phone. He had taken the same picture at the same time, which was very strange because he was consulting with somebody. So that was it. And then he looks at me, he goes, "Spiritual tourist." Which I thought was very funny. Then I had another experience where he in ceremony, he brought in these, what he calls the 1111 symbols, 11, 11, 12, 12, 13, 13. And there's 3 books that his daughter is now selling. He passed in 2021, I believe. Yes. 21 or 22. I'm sorry, I don't remember. But we were very close, and I knew that I would do some work together with him. So they were doing a ceremony in the dead of winter out here. This is one of the reasons I'm still back here. It was like 34 below zero. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but my daughter and I flew in, and he was doing sweat lodges, and we went into the sweat lodge, and he said, "Welcome home." And I would watch him, how he would call the spirits. I mean, it was so profound. I've done sweat lodges with other people, but there was just something magical about him. So he was honoring the Lakota indigenous ways, in that altar, and then also very connected to the star people. So these symbols that came in ceremony that are in these books are the exact same symbols that were on the bar at Roswell. Almost
Mm.
every one of these ships that crash, when they recover them, they find, I'm sure you've seen pictures of those. So, and I can share more about that later, but it was phenomenal. So he brought each of these symbols in ceremony. So he told me, and this is the story he tells, that he was taken out of his home maybe 25 years ago, and these people from Orion came and thought projected the symbols to him and said to do something with him. And then he took them in ceremony, sweat lodges, and different people would bring in these messages about these symbols. So I mean, they're really, really phenomenal. They're universal and spiritual laws of creation, and each 11, 11, 12, 12, 13, 13 is different. But I immediately resonated with this because it talked about the star people. Each symbol
Mm.
had a representative of the star person, an ascended
Mm.
master, and an earthly being, which is exactly what was happening with me. I was very connected to the earth. I'd go out and talk to trees and hear messages from trees. And, don't do a lot with, the visitations of ascended masters, but I see them and they come to me in different ways. So all of a sudden so he saw me writing all these symbols and he said, I've got something for you. I know what you're doing and I know what your mission is. So he went and came back with Billy Meyer's The Talmud of Emmanuel. And he
Mm.
handed it to me and said, read this for all the things that Emmanuel talked about creation, because you had something to do with it. And
Mm.
you are going to teach this in your own way. So
Mm.
I was looking, and the repetitive pattern I'll just share is over and over again. Emmanuel, I call him Emmanuel, would talk about everything being separate units that are part of the whole. So all
Mm.
your cells make up an organ, all your organs make up a body, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm one of those people that's like been connected to the everything. I see gold filaments of light and know that the trees, the movement of water affects something in another place. I mean, just total interconnectedness, and I feel it in my body. But it was almost overwhelming. I don't know how I kind of managed this, but he when we would do sweat lodges, he would have me and other people share messages. So I would see spirits coming in, animal spirits, star people, a lot of star people, and I would see them in complete darkness,
Mm.
with like Carillion photography, like or auras
Yes.
around them, right? And they would come and talk to me, or they would touch me. I would feel an eagle going like
Mm.
this, or a deer, or an animal, or star people. And a couple times, my star family came into those lodges, because when you're in a high vibrational spiritual mode, you're very in tune and the veil's completely open. So we started doing that, and I kept writing these codes. And then at that first gathering, there was two grandmothers, but especially this one that's still in Sedona, who I love dearly. Um, we were doing a workshop, and she just stood up and started speaking this language, and my ears perked up. I said, I know that language. I said, what is
Mm.
it? And she said, it's Arcturian. And so, we talked about it later. I lost touch with her, and then years later, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, she was showing. I became friends with this woman, and she was showing me this picture book, and it was me. I was in her book, and she had the same jacket on that she had when I first met her, and I made that connection. She was the one that activated my light language. So all of a sudden, there was this other grandmother also there, and I told her, I want to speak this, but I don't know how. She said, you will in time. When I went back to New York, my friend said, I think you channel, and I think you're supposed to do this. So she gave me a piece of paper and said, talk. And I was, grunting and doodling, and nothing was happening. But when I came back here, and I was basically, my daughter and I left New York City, left everything, and decided to have a complete change of life. And we stayed with this chief and his family for a little while, and then got a place here. But we were doing sweat lodges every every week, a couple times a week, and vision quests. I'm also a sun dancer in the Lakota tradition. So a lot of these ceremonies, but he was always watching me, and we would have these really profound talks. We'd go in the sweat lodge and come out, and everyone else would leave. He and I would go outside on the deck, and we'd count the ships that were coming by. I think they were around him a lot. And so anyway, all this really profound stuff happened. But he told me I would write a book, and I was laughing at him because I was still pretty much dyslexic, even though I somehow figured out how to read. And he said, you're going to pull all this stuff together, and it's going to make sense for, at the time he told me it was for people in cubicles to get them back on land. But anyway, so all this happened, and then there was a grandmother that we work with. She's in her 30s, but we call her grandmother because she's wise and is completely disabled, doesn't talk, doesn't walk a lot. And her mom, she channels to her mom. And I asked this chief, I said, come in, I want to ask her some questions and say some of these star languages that I started speaking, which he also had me speak in the lodge. And so I started doing one after another. She said, that's Arcturian, Pleiadian, Orion, Tau Cetian. This is from the upper Northeast and ancient culture. I knew this, that. And then she said, that one, that's you, named Liuesh Tunila, from the 66th dimension star system M something something, these numbers. And he goes, wow. And I said, wow, what are you even talking about? And she said, you're bringing this work down through these dimensions, these higher concepts, whatever you want to call it, the quantum. So I took it with a grain of salt, didn't really understand it, trying to stay out of my ego, like, what is this? Yeah. And then I started working with it. So more and more, he did these conferences, and then he featured me as one of the keynote speakers. And then I got on the circuit. This was about 2017, right about the time that I reached out to you. And I knew it wasn't quite the right time to speak with you because I had to do some more work, to figure this out. So I then spoke at that conference. I spoke at the Psychic Sasquatch conference that was very big with Kalani and Kelly Lepidoritis in Washington State a couple times, with Tolik doing these Andromeda, these transformational shift conferences. And then we'd also, with this group, we do Sundance together. We go to Serpent Mound, which I'm sure you're familiar with here. And so everywhere I was traveling, I was going to speak these messages. So I'd speak a light language, and then the message would come through. I was just transmitting it. And I was told I'm not channeling. It's just coming like a transmission. And then when we'd have off time, I'd go out on the land for 5-6 hours and commune with the land. So I decided to leave my house about the time that I reached out to you, for 5 years. I left. I have now a 25-year-old daughter who I adore, and who's close to me physically, about 2 hours. That's one of the reasons I came back here from Sedona. But and she would do these ceremonies with me too. I raised her as a Buddhist, and then we did this, spiritual work on the red path, and then we're doing our own now. But all these different sacred, divine feminine ceremonies, all the stuff that was really grounding and earthy. And then I would have these star experiences. And so all of a sudden, right before I left, I started journaling these things. So very quickly, what happened is I started, all of a sudden, boom, I started waking up on these time codes. So I would wake up and look at my clock or my phone, 33222, 333, 444, 555, every single day, almost even now. Just boom, that's when the message comes in. And it was really profound. And I would hear, and I'll tell you how I experienced the star people, but I would see them almost like an etheric veil. Sometimes they would stand around my bed. Sometimes I would hear them in my head, and they would just say, "Now we're going to tell you something, and you need to write this down." and then integrate it and have the experience of it and then do the research. So there's a whole process of how this happens. So I'd be there, I'd be dictating in my phone underneath the covers, half awake. And then I would go and they would show me to go online and do very, very specific keywords. It was like I was doing coding work, keywords that they would show me. And they said, look for images of what we've telepathed to you, and then read the research behind it. So I was learning scientific information. I mean, really, like on lots of different levels. Yeah, so all these messages started happening. I jot them, I draw them, I do diagrams. I get 20 pages of writing literally every day for probably the last almost 10 years, 8 years. And just kept writing. I didn't know what to do with it. And then I was traveling for 5 years, and my daughter left the house, so I didn't have a house. I was living very minimally, but staying at different places, and I do home gatherings and that kind of thing, or these conferences, but really just out there, walking through the desert sometimes. I mean, really, I've had, shamanic deaths and kundalini awakenings. I mean, all this stuff has happened. And while I was getting these messages, and anyway, so let's see. So about 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, I was shown to completely disconnect from society for about 3 years. And we found it, my partner at the time and I found, excuse me, a place on like a homestead. We renovated this place that ended up we had to move from. And then I went to Sedona for a year, and I was living in a beautiful place with a friend, but not really talking to too many people, even though I know many people there, and just kept putting this together. So this has been 8 to 10 years of downloads. And my partner, who is at the time, we've separated, but he speaks on these higher levels, and he'd put a blindfold on and I would read him these messages, and he'd travel and then give me feedback about what he saw or whatever. But I had to make sense of them. It was in one day, there'd be 2 to 5 guides that would meander through 20 different topics. So it wasn't just one topic. It was like we'd start with energy and then how it works in your body, and then I would see how energy is functioning within an atom, and then this kind of thing from all these different guides. And it was just kind of all over the place. And so I said, I got to organize this somehow. So I used a couple different multi-dimensional apps like Evernote and Scrivener, to kind of parse this out so I could start organizing it. And then all of a sudden I started putting it in buckets, and I saw this whole blueprint of all this work. So all these star guides, there have been hundreds of guides with very specific messages. So 3 guides will come in and show me different perspectives on a particular topic, and then they go on to the next one. So I've been learning, they've been teaching me. So my partner and I joke that we calculated just from my nose, if I was writing one book that was like 300 pages, I'd have 800 books. I mean, it's just mind-boggling when I look at this stuff. It's just so much. So I had to figure out what to do with it. So anyway, I've spent the last 3 years organizing it into the different guides, the different topics. And I wrote one book that I was going to put out that ended up being 200 pages, 2,000 pages. And the index of the book is like 60 pages. I mean, just on every topic you can imagine and how they're connected. And then, so sometimes when these messages come in, I get a full download. It's like poetry, 2 pages of like, I call it as is. I don't even touch it. And sometimes it's things that my higher self or whatever has kind of strung together and working it out. And so anyway, so I have that one book out, Ascension now. I thought that was what people might really need, with lots of information about the stages we're going through, et cetera, et cetera. But I have 35 books already written. And all this is happening while I have been living the bare minimum. I mean, I'm just really like, I do client sessions. I've done sessions all over the world, I was going to say telepathically, um, online or whenever I'm traveling, or I'll do my artwork or something. And that's how I was supporting myself. But I'm really shifting into, doing something more, courses and books, and I'm making art. So I draw these codes, and I'll show you a little bit of that. But this profound stuff has happened. So this is kind of bringing you up to date where what's happened to me so far. And I was told, I connect also with this chief who still comes now from the spirit world, and says it's time to release the code. It's time to share this with people. So that's one of the reasons I reached out to you, because I know that you would understand. But also all the people, I've seen many of your interviews and conversations, presentations, and I'm shown a really, really clear picture about my mission. One is with the light language, to bring all these communicators together, whether it's a forum, whether it's an online. I'm developing a website. I have like 5 projects going on right now, but somehow get them to activate each other. When somebody starts speaking, something happens. But just the light language alone, I have like 3 books about what I'm shown and what I've personally experienced, what it really is. It's way beyond the language, how it functions at a quantum level, and how we can start using it. And I realize most of the things I've written are for the future that we're walking into right now. So I kind of had to wait for this time to sync up. But anyway, there's so much more I want to share. But I think that is huge. Also, the Star Kids. People call me a Star Kid whisperer, like the horse whisperer. I think people that vibrate at a certain level, these kids see. I'll go into the store, especially here. There are a lot of these Star Kids that are really awakened, and they just stare, or they'll come over and they'll touch me and talk to me and just telepath with me, and they're talking to me, and they're saying things like, please tell my mom I don't like that sweater she keeps putting on me. It's very, very funny. Or, I really don't know how to function here. So, I mean, there's so much I want to share, but I have been shown that there are some people who have been here many, many lifetimes. And I think a lot of these indigenous cultures and have carried some heavy stuff, many lifetimes. And then there are other people like these Star Kids. Many of them have never been here, so they don't really know how to function. So anyway, there's that, and the light language. And I'm also shown that because I can start people reveal themselves to me, and I'm shown at some point, probably very near future, maybe even this year, that somehow when I'm standing there, people will start to interface with Star people through me, and then they'll somehow use me as a conduit and appear physically, whether it's a projection or something. I don't know. I'm still trying to understand that. But so people can become comfortable with them again. And so, yeah, so even now, I see them in dream time. I see them, physically, like, as I'm looking at you here. They come in thought forms. So as I'm doing these sessions, when I do private sessions, I will start with a little light language to kind of tone with the other person. And what I'm shown is that I go up in a higher dimension, and my higher self is talking to their higher self, and we're having a dialogue up there, and the people usually feel it. So it doesn't really matter what we're talking about, but I'm reading codes and patterns, and then I'm speaking it back to them, or I'm speaking what their higher self is telling, their star self is telling me. A lot of times I can feel people's star energy. It's like I'm reading their energetic frequency signature, and I can tell oh, they're Pleiadian, but they've been on Tauseti or Camelopardalis, they've been here, whatever. So sometimes. And these light languages, some of them are star languages, and I can recognize patterns and codes. So when I hear certain people talk, I immediately know that's Lyran or whatever. And there's a lot of new star systems people don't even know that are coming in. And I'll also recognize when it's the person's, the individual's ancient tongue, like their own language. Yeah. And sometimes it's just energy frequency. So sometimes when I'm speaking with people, whether it's a presentation or a session or just friends, I just spontaneously start talking light language. It's actually easier for me than English. You know, it's like an energy transfer. People feel it immediately. You know, they feel buzzing. We'll dialogue about things because there's a paradigm shift that happens. But I am shown every single time I do this with people, something profound changes, and a lot of them start speaking star language, that kind of thing. So anyway, there's so much more I want to share, but I just wanted to tell you about that, and maybe if I could show you a couple screens of my work, and then also share a little bit of my light language with you.
Yes, that would be great. I'd look forward to seeing. Yeah.
And a lot of times when I'm doing these, you know, I call them sharing or presentations, I have music going and some slides behind me. It's like a performance almost. Yeah. And it's like journeying. I take people on a journey. So let's see. So these are twin caves. They're Native American caves in Illinois that I used to, when I was like 9, I'd rent a canoe and just go in there by myself or with friends, but mostly myself. And I found a lot of arrowheads and everything. And I go in and meditate. I just did that. I don't know why. I just did that. And this is a little teepee that my aunt gave me. That's me at 3. That's about the time I saw the star people. And I would go in there, and my sister remembers visiting from New York and seeing I would meditate and I'd make salves, and I would just be, I'd just be in another zone. You know, this was when I was about 15, 16, something like that. I was so prolific as an artist. When I was 17, I had a one-woman show with all these paintings and symbols. And anyway, there's a lot that I can go through. I'll just click through a couple of these just to kind of see, you know, how this built up. But I was always doing symbols, codes, dimensional stuff. These are my 2 favorite paintings that I did when I was like 17. They're about 6 feet tall. This is greeting star people. This is a portal. This is some kind of time code on some dimensional thing, some kind of portal window. And this is 1111. I had no idea about 1111, but I was making cards, you know, 11:11. And then this is a star person. This is actually how I see them. They come in with this kind of etheric wrapper, but this is like all these weird tools and just strange worlds. There was no one in my family that was in business. My dad was a dentist and my mom was an artist. And I decided I'd just start my own business. And so I had branding and I was doing all these codes, and I don't know, it was pretty interesting how this happened. And I'd go to the library and research massage, ESP, telepathy, palm reading. It just, you know, my dad would drop me off at the kids area, and as soon as he would leave, I'd go upstairs and find these other books. When I started speaking star language, I went to the 10-10-10 Crystal Skulls ceremony in New York City with some of the Flor de Mayo, who was one of the 13 indigenous grandmothers, and a couple people, and they had all these crystal skulls. And somebody was doing this thing. And I said, what is that? You know, mudras. And they said, that's Pleiadian language. And then right after that, somebody said, well, this was, I remember that. And then somebody later said something about a language. And when I started speaking this, they said, I think it's called light language. I've heard of that. So I went online, and this was probably 2014, and there were maybe 50 people that did it. And you were one of the people that I came across. And you had this video where people were speaking star language, and you showed their codes and their drawings, Tracy and other people. And I was like, oh, my people, they're my
Mm.
people. They understand this language. And yeah, so this is how I found out about you. And now, so many people are doing it. It's just phenomenal
Mm.
how quick it is. But so you were one of the people that I knew understood this, and were working with people, and that's how I explored it a
Mm.
little bit further. For me, I speak many star languages, and I'm connected to many guides, and with do this and all these mediums, and I write endless amounts of scripts. I've just done it all my life. So these are samples of some diagrammatic schemes, if you will. I'll just click through these quickly. That
Mm.
have codes and symbols, and I understand them. It's like a little shorthand sketch of something, but I could spend hours talking about each one of these. They're
Yeah.
descriptive about how things work,
Yeah.
dimensional things. So tell me if I'm going too fast. Um,
That's all good.
okay, so all this is happening. Then the codes came in,
Yeah.
hundreds of them. So every time, a lot of times when I use light language in all my sessions, and a lot of times I'll do a drawing for someone later that I'll show you in a minute, and then I write a script. So some of these are scripts I've written for other people, and some just come, but I just do this completely conscious without thinking about it. But there have
Yeah.
been thousands. I have notebooks like crazy about
Yeah.
all these different languages, hundreds of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and I can understand. If I think about it, it doesn't mean anything to me, so I like have to turn off my thinking mind. But
Yeah.
this one over here is a Sasquatch language, and what's really interesting, and Brian Bland and a couple other people connected with the Sasquatch, we're talking about this. When you go out on the land and you see these glyphs that they
That's
leave,
right. Yes.
this
Yeah.
is kind of a language representation of that. I'll just share also, when I was doing a vision quest out here, very close here, I was there for 4 days, and I wasn't hallucinating. I was totally awake, and I wanted to go out and connect with the Sasquatch. And
Mm.
we've got these little prayer ties, like it's this little string around you. And I was right next to the forest, and this profound thing happened, um, uh, where on a full moon, again, I don't know why that's significant for me, but um, from all different directions, I started feeling the ground thumping, and I'm in the middle of nowhere. People are like 200, 500, feet away, or like way, way away. I'm by myself, pitch dark, except for the moon. And they all started coming around me like a whole tribe. And they went into the forest in front of me. I saw them walking. So, and they were probably, oh, let's say I'm 5'9", probably 6 to 8 feet. And there were some smaller ones. It was like a whole clan. And they went in the trees and were moving. And I had this rush of fear because I was completely alone.
Mm.
And I said to myself, fear is in the mind. And this is what happens when I've seen some pretty weird looking star people that come right in my face and everything. And so I'm very comfortable with this now. But they all mind spoke to me and said, why are you scared of us? And I said, because I came to meet you and I'd like to get to know you. And so
Mm.
I sang a song or offered something. And all of a sudden I felt this wave of love that I have never felt before. To me, the Sasquatch, every time I've interacted with them, they've been the most beautiful,
Mm.
kind, loving beings. I mean, not like you see in the movies or what a lot of people talk about. For me, it's always been this phenomenal experience. And so then they downloaded this huge packet of information, who they are, where they come from, how they're related to Maldek, how they shapeshift in and out of dimensions, what they're doing here, how they're working with the earth. I mean, I get these, boom, like a packet of information that I kind of have to work through. But that was phenomenal. You know, I've seen him, you know, bend trees, like a whole tree bend, and then like they're bending, you know, something pliable. And I've seen him go in and out of dimensions. So they've started explaining to me how this works. And they say that they are also, because I know that you were really interested in the Sasquatch when you were on the show. And they show me that they are also star people. And they've been here on Earth probably longer than any star person. This is why they can go in and out of dimensions. And you know, anyway, there's a whole book about Sasquatch I'm writing about, but how they're also related to the mounds, the Native American mounds all over. So the star people and that kind of thing. Anyway, that was a little aside. This is what happens with me. I just click through a couple more of these so you can see. It's also a Sasquatch writing. These are different things. So sometimes I understand this, and sometimes it's just a feeling. I tell people I can't really, there's no direct translation. Same with the light language. Then these are just little doodles I do. Tell me if I'm going too fast, but I mean, it's just been endless. And I work really fast. It takes me probably 10 minutes to do these things. And it's kind of everything. Then I started, and I'll use light language and codes. When I was sun dancing, this is what the sun looks like to me when I'm in sacred space, and the star people, this is how the messages come. Then, you know, I'm a painter. So I, started painting these dots and codes almost like Aboriginal paintings. I travel in dream time to Uluru and, you know, walk on the land, and it's like I'm going many different places. These are like, this is almost, I feel some of these are like I'm painting plants on another planet, or this etheric energy. This is what the Arcturians had given to me. Anyway, and orbs and there's a lot there. So then I started doing these things called energy frequency signatures. I'm guided through this whole process as it's evolving, as I'm evolving. So they said, you know, draw a person's portrait as we show you. So they're completely different. And what I was shown is that I'm drawing how creative the codes of creation and creativity moves through them. So it's almost like a psychic surgery. Like I can see this person has a block in their liver or something like that. These codes, sometimes I know exactly what I'm writing, and sometimes they're a message for them. You know, I just give it, or I'll speak light language, and I've been shown to put my hand over it. I read it back energetically, and then I speak it to them. But this is how some of these started coming through, and they were all different. So I started doing these by hand drawing, because I think it's really important to use your hand. And then they became digital. So I do these portraits for people. And I can do these in about 15 minutes, 10 minutes. They just, boom, they just come. So let me just go through a couple of these. And so I was volunteering with some Buddhist monks for about a month near the stupa in Sedona, and this came through. I mean, they all have stories. This is the Christ consciousness and the balance of the masculine and feminine, which is also one of the things I talk about. This is dragon energy. This is a soul portrait of a person, how I see their energy frequency. This one is one of my favorites, like an atomic structure. Couple more. So I also now I sell these as prints if people want to buy them, or you know, I'm making them into other things, but it's like dimensional portals. This one is one I'm using on my book cover. I think I'm supposed to I'm making oracle cards and things out of them, but this feels very Arcturian. I'm very connected with Lemurian energy. And this is almost like what the being looked like that came in, but this is a portrait of my friend, and I remember exactly who these are. I mean, there's so many. I'll show you 2 or 3 more things. Then I also do these light code, soul code portraits. So I just write people's codes, and I'll send it to them digitally, or give them a print. This was one. Anyway, so that's kind of how this happens for me. This is when I was speaking at all these conferences. This is my friend Jarrell takes these amazing orb pictures, and this is when I was speaking light language. He captured that. Phenomenal, amazing photographer. And there's Todd. This is when Todd first kind of started. He came out to Sedona when I was talking to this large group. And anyway, so this is when he kind of was launching his channel. Okay, so this guy over here is the chief. That's Chief Golden Light Eagle that I worked with, and that was his brother. Let me show you a couple more things here. It's when we were speaking in Sedona. This is like a wisdom panel. Laura Eisenhower was on this panel. Couple, Yukwala, who is amazing, Havasupai. So I was always connected to Native American things, and people look at me and with the blonde hair and everything, and they don't know that I have been told I'm Lenni Lenape, and Nez Perce, which is another tribe here in the States that's not as well known. But anyway, so the point is, I was teaching, I was performing, I was doing all this stuff. And to go from this to utter silence, speaking to 5 people, 3 people really, in a year. This is a light language gathering. So you probably know some of these people. This is Light Star, who does those amazing artwork and cards, and she speaks. She's very much like me. We've done a presentation together, but she speaks star language and draws the codes and draws that thing. This is Jamie Price, who you've probably heard of, who's phenomenal. Shakina Rose, who brings in some amazing messages, and then Laura. And we were brought together to do this light language panel, and we were sort of telling our story. And at the end, my friend Tolik, who was doing the conference, said, okay, we're done. And we all looked at each other and said, no, there's something else that has to happen here. And so we got in the middle of this group, and we just all started speaking light language and doing mudras and moving around in a circle and everything. And afterwards, I mean, it was really, really powerful. We all said, we don't really understand what we just did, but that's something that we need to do to anchor something in Sedona, or, clear the energy. So this is how I write the codes. Anyway, let's see. There's so many other pictures here. There's one other thing I want to show you. Like we do, when this chief would talk, we would do these ceremonies where we'd all get in a zone, and he was working on all these principles. And I think I'm disappointed that he passed so quickly, because I was shown we were going to work together. But this behind here, he was bringing in the codes of the 13 chakras. Well, that I was getting the same message, but I never told him. So he brought in, from what he had envisioned, the names of the guides, how these principles worked, and then he would have us in the ceremony channel a message, bring in a message for each of these dimensions. This is my daughter when she was about 16, maybe, Imani, and that's the chief. We were at a radio station doing a show. And this is when I was at the Sasquatch conference. I just loved going here because these people were so real. I've done many different kinds of conferences, but they were just real earthy, and everybody had a story about how Sasquatch pulled them from a burning car, or saved their marriage, or given them gifts, or something like that. Traveling, we were doing all these ceremonies. So I'm not going to go through all these, but Blythe, California, and kind of all over
these grandmothers. So I was out on the circuit, if you want to say that. But just decided to, kind of lay low. This is Grandma Chanda, who I had mentioned channels with her mom and speaks the star languages. So she's, she will do the figure eight with her head, and she doesn't like, I became very, very close with her. Like, she does sessions with people remotely. And she wanted me to touch her and hold her, and I would carry her around a lot when her mom was doing these presentations, and we just talk for hours. I mean, she gets very excited, and I love her so much. And she's working on another dimension, so she'll come in dream time to many people, but she'll come to me when I'm working on a concept and just say, oh yeah, this is how this is supposed to work. So anyway, there's lots and lots of pictures. This is Sakina Blue Star. This is the grandmother that spoke the Arcturian to me that I got back together with. And this is the drum circle at one of the gatherings with the chief. Anyway, I went out on the land. I'd go out and see petroglyphs by myself with friends. I don't know if you've ever seen these. Someone I knew in Sedona had these artifacts. Some are fake and some are real that have been passed around that are, Mexican, Mayan, Toltec. Anyway, so I was having some really profound interactions with those. Let's see. Just two or three more. This was at Joshua Tree. Was it Joshua Tree? Yeah. There's a skull, Sasquatch skull formation there. And, just going out on the land and, so not only am I getting messages from the star people, but I'm also getting messages from the land. So I go out and, how people bury crystals or say a prayer or something. I get uploads and downloads from wherever I'm going. So anyway, let's see. Then I did that, and then I did this. And there's this brilliant, amazing artist named Ashley Ruiz, who's an illustrator. And she said she saw me like this. This is how I appear to her in the star world. And then I described a couple of my guides to her: Sasquatch, Arcturian, this Sasquatch grandmother, and this kind of elder, like in that Elohim or something like that. And this is what she drew. So she was channeling. It's fascinating for me because I love collaborative projects with people. So I kind of described it, and she brought through exactly what I was seeing. So just some sketches. So this is how the star people appear to me. I see them, like even now, I feel one around me. So there's a whole, so each of these guides, I've written a book about each of these groups and the sub guides, plus the topics they've shown me in the subtopic. This is a picture of Sasquatch I found on a bowl in an Indian reservation in the middle of nowhere in Tucson, which is pretty interesting. Wow. Okay, so these are the names of the Sasquatch that have come to me, and these are, each one of these are individuals, and then these are tribes. So like this one I work with named Situ is a female energy. She comes, I can smell her, I can feel her. And each one of them identify themselves like with a code or a holographic picture in my mind. Or I will feel empathically how they're feeling. It's like tuning into, somebody's energy frequency. So they come in different, I have to say in light language. I can't explain, like a different frequency band, whatever. And then some of these guides, like this, the Kite will change the name that I hear when he's changing his mood. They have moods, you know, or when he's changing whatever work he's doing. If he's working on the land, I hear him with a different name. Then the star nations, you know, I try to pull together pictures of what they look like to me. So I've seen them like this. I've seen it very much like this mostly. But many different forms, you know, some are orbs, some are, you know, whatever. So the star nations, they're sometimes it's been a momentary thing, and sometimes it's repeat visits over a period of time. But like the nation of Venus, I call them nations. Like, this is how I learn in the indigenous way: star nations, animal nations, you know. And so kind of everybody, I don't know how to explain this. They'll bring a message specifically about them, or something I'm supposed to do, or something I'm supposed to share with somebody. So even when I'm doing a session, a guide will come in and have a very specific message, and I'm just the messenger. Sometimes as I'm talking with somebody, they'll kind of like, you know, Dolores Cannon was visited by these guides through different you know, totally unrelated people when she was doing the hypnotherapy, and the message would come through similar, kind of like that. You know, or it's something I'm supposed to learn, or it's something I'm supposed to share with people. So, but the Arcturians are really the core group that I connect with on a pretty regular basis. Then all of a sudden, these divine feminine energies started coming. So it's interesting, because I grew up as a tomboy. I did not consider myself, you know, feminine in any way. And all of a sudden, you know, the white buffalo calf woman, I've seen her, you know, she's given me this bundle. I'm working with certain tools and energy, the Hathors, these, just a lot of them, like huge groups. So this energy of the divine feminine, the creatress, you know, would come in these names. So then I would start researching things. And as I would read them, I mean, it almost sounds fantastical, like I'm making this up in my head, except that I'm having a physical or energetic experience of each one of these things. So I started, this is what I've been logging in. There's one that I call Emanuela, which I have been shown was a twin sister to Jesus, who is one of the biggest guides that I work with. I don't know in what capacity I may have been related to her, or it may just be somebody that I resonate with. You know, I call them all people. And this chief and I call him Eagle. And we talked for a long time about this, and he had some pretty phenomenal understanding of her. But when he said that name, that's the name that I was working with before. So it was pretty interesting. Animal nations, you know, in the physical, but also galactic. So all these white animals started appearing. I go in dream time or envisioning to this place out on the land, and all these, and like a representative of each of these animals are there, and they're telling me as they're becoming extinct, they're going on the other side of the new earth. They're coming as the pure forms of themselves, almost like an archetype for their tribe, I guess. So and each one has a message. So just like you would think about animal spirits, you know, a deer is about the heart, or you know, a lion is about strength and courage, that kind of thing. They would tell me these messages, but it was like a frequency that they carry. That's why they look the way they do, you know. So a lot of times people will look at a certain animal, like a giraffe, it's long and it does this, or a snake behaves a certain way, but they're showing me they manifest in these forms because they carry a certain frequency. So there's a whole other thing about that. And then there's galactic versions of these beings, these dragon guardians, the phoenix, mermaid people, you know, serpentine energy. And then the elementals I love, because I'm so in tune with nature. I love nature. And I think, you know, it's related to whatever work I'm doing. You know, all these elements came in as cosmic things or beings. Then there's the earth nation. So each one of these, the tree nation, the rock nations, fire, they're energetic frequencies, like codes, but then they have representatives. It's hard to explain quickly, but they show me how their elementals, including the pixies and the fairies, that guard each, like a gateway in on the land. So when I go out on the land, I offer tobacco, I offer a song, you know, because that's the tradition that I learned to honor them. I'll leave a piece of chocolate or something, you know, and all of a sudden this other world opens. It's like opening the veil, and I can see elementals. I don't know. It's just what happens. I don't even question anymore. Then these three, like a Melchizedek, but not really, like a Jesus, may or may not have been, and Quetzalcoatl started coming in together as three. I woke up and they were all standing at the foot of my bed, and somehow they're telling me that on the astral plane, they're all working with each other. It's like something about each of these guides carries a certain principle that has to be reunited, you know. So they have their specialty or whatever, but that's kind of what's going on. And this is a little bit, it's probably the Ark of the Covenant or something, but I was trying to find some representation more like this, of this beam, this Leo-ish Tunila that came to me. So my name, I have another name, you know, my birth name. And this chief, during a ceremony, I received a spirit name from him, which is Wichakpe Tosha Wesh Tewi, which means beautiful violet star woman. And he said, because I work with the violet ray of energy, you know, I've had visions of moving like a violet energy around different places, and that I was an Arcturian star person, et cetera, and related to the white buffalo calf woman somehow. I mean, I didn't understand that, but that was the name I was given by him in spirit name. And then the star people came and said, go by the name Shakara and add the Tosha from what I got from this chief. So Tosha is a Lakota word. It means the color violet. So in the Lakota language, they have different words for colors. So everyday violet, everyday purple or violet is one thing, but the Tosha is like the spiritual. That's the Tosha. But they said, use the name Shakara because then we can see you. It's like a frequency. And I said, I didn't understand that for years, 3-4 years. Then I was out in the middle of the desert. We were doing a ceremony at Giant Rock, you know, that big rock in the middle of the desert. I said, okay, show me a sign. And I went, you know, for 5-10 minutes by myself in the middle of nowhere, went behind this rock, and somebody had spray painted Shakara. And I said, that was a sign. As soon as I decided to, you know, assume that name, I guess, I felt very different. It was like I walked into another part of myself. And they said, this is really weird to say, but they said the Shakara is an energy that's related to this Leo-ish Tanila. I still am trying to figure this out, but they said you're carrying this energy and you're like a vehicle, like you just you bring this in. So anyway, that's kind of where the name come from. So, you know, the Shakara. And then they said research your name, and I found all the, you know, the Egyptian dynamics for the Ka and the Shah and the, you know, all these different cultures, and it's the name itself is coded. So anyway, there's a whole group of guardians also that I work with. I did a vision quest at the Devil's Tower, which I believe to be an ancient tree. And I was staying down here, and as we were leaving, there's a ship just flying by. I see ships all the time. These are orbs and pictures that I've taken of beings that manifest in front of me. I couldn't capture this on my phone, so I did it on my camera and then took a picture of it with my phone, but it was like this moving orb. I see symbols all the time like this, and then energies and beings floating in the sky. These are the messages that came in. I'm not going to go through this, but I'll give you a sampling of these topics. So this book that I just finished called Ascension Now, Becoming the New You. These are the main chapters. There are sub-chapters and sub-chapters. This is just the tip of the iceberg, but I have each one of these things could be a book, and I'm kind of rolling it out that way. So there's like 8 different topics. This is all the stages of ascension. And then there's a whole downloads. These are the downloads that I've compiled, I've organized, and I wrote or pulled all the writing together. So this is one whole section is about daily life and practical living. So each one of these are, chapters, all this stuff about the individual self, your truth, your mission, self-healing, the body, anything that's related. Then this whole, even though there's only a couple here, this is really, really dense. How creation works, creativity, manifestation, how to use it. And then there's a whole thing on energy. And it looks like, like a listing from, just a kind of a checklist of everything related to energy. I get in these altered states for months where I was living in another dimension, pulling this together, writing this, and then I'd go and I'd write, and then I'd have these massive hot flashes. I'd have to lay down for hours and recuperate, and then I'd get up with all this energy and keep writing. So, I mean, that's how all this stuff came. But I was actually living through these things I was learning. And then there's a whole thing about the cosmos and galactic. There's a whole thing about nature and all the elements. Light language is huge. How it manifests, what it does, and where we're going to be using it more collectively in the future. Then all these things about tools and symbols. There's like 2 more: action, ceremony, and ritual. This notion of union and unity and what's happening. Thousands and thousands of pages. You get the gist. So these are how these things also manifest. I'm doing these oracle cards now. This is just a deck of 13, and then I have a meditation that goes along with it. But these are the guides. Then I use my art. Then this is almost like a poetic message. This is my new book. This with all about ascension in these stages. Each one of these are the list of books. So I'll have a book on each guide group, probably 2 or 3. I mean, the thing is, these are all written. I wrote all of these, just the top level, but all at once, like 35 books. And then I do these like affirmation cards. I'm guided to do these little glyphs and runes. They're like little, I don't know, I write symbols on things. And then this is an example of some more of these art prints that I make. So the Star Kids, this is so important, and the work that you're doing is so important. I have a whole chapter in this first book about the Star Kids, why they're here, how they function, what their role is, how to, I'm already working on a book about parenting star children, because I believe my daughter was one. I want to eventually create a virtual and then a physical retreat center where people can go and work with light language, with sound, with music, with healing, art, creativity, dancing, cooking, building, like an intentional community, but like a working with tools and energy that haven't been done in that way before. So like having a quantum physicist work with a classical guitarist and create something. Like the guitarist would create a song based on some theory that he's learned or something like that. Or the Star Kids would, all the Star Kids are the teachers, and they, as you've seen, they teach how to work with sound and tone and crystals and that kind of thing. And so there's this crosshatch of multidimensional things. So that's one thing. And also, with the light language, like I said, bringing people together. I feel like there's a couple things I need to do, but this is me, like I said, coming back out in the world, literally having talked to thousands and thousands of people, then went quiet for 3 years talking to 3 people, I've been, about as silent as you can get, living as minimally as you can get to do this work. I've sacrificed so much of my own personal life. That's what's been going on with me.
My goodness.
I just wanted to share some light language with you.
Please do.
So I'm an artist. My mind just never quits. I'm always creating things. So I'm working on light language meditations and lullabies and light language for children. And I rap and sing and scat in light language. It's just coming out a lot of different ways. So I, perform it, but I also use it energetically. So I'm in the process right now of compiling all these different languages. So whatever is going to come through is probably related to you. And I know that I know you're a star person and you have all these frequencies and energies and guides around you. So whatever happens, and I like to tell people that I'm not doing anything to them. I'm not projecting or whatever, but it's like a tuning of a frequency that I tune into. So I do this completely conscious. Sometimes I'll do mudras. I use my hands a lot to gesture, which is surprising. I'm not normally doing that, but I'm painting with energy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just say a couple languages that come through just to give you a flavor of this, which is very different when I do a session or speaking to a group of people. I usually go around the whole room and do their languages. Okay. Shukotua singir wasanin and washante. Itala kuno mo shakaitet de washingir wasanin and washante. Itu mo usukotua shkine and walakaitet dushtingir wasanin mo saka. No usa no washanka duskine and washamo tuskite duashane. Anaso mo dula kainen and washamo tola kinen and washanka. So that's my language. Shupa to singing it to sound it to the sanko of a kainen and was sunk to a skit to what kainen and was sunk to a shangy in it near bola kainen and was but the kid of the sang they do sakate to a shangy of sankarura, which really fast. Hiked in or shumbo lua kainen and was shanko to the dusha, Nino was sanko to a skit to a shaman and was sankoda. It's like a dragon energy. And then this grandmother energy comes in, like an ancient grandmother. Sukoto shingir was sanin and was shamoto la kite. Ina su bu sha kaite did a shanga was sanin and was shamoto skite. Ana suku tushki nin and was shamoto la kinen and was shante. Sakoto shane ku tu sa katoto shingir was samano shante. The Sasquatch is like just so bad ningo do sa mo suka no shampoo. That's what happens.
Sounds almost like Japanese or whatever.
I know. It's funny, they sound almost, some sound Tibetan, Japanese. Yeah. So.
And what about Arcturian? Since Arcturus is one of your connections, what is Arcturian? The Arcturian.
Which language?
The Arcturian.
Which is the Arcturian language? That's the one that seems to come from me the most. I mean, the thing is, it's like dialogues and like what's it called? Yeah, I guess dialogues and slang. Different. If you go down south, you're gonna hear pidgin speak and southern drawl and different places. If you're in the country or the city, they use different languages. So it's kind of the same. Okay. But for me, Arcturian is more like it's the one I know that kind of flows a little bit more. So my language is like Shkotu singir was sanin and was shamotu lekine. Isa mono soon kotuashikinin and was samotuakite to a shanin and was sankota. No usu kotuashkinin and was sampo to a kinin and was sham wesekite to a shani. sometimes when I hear other people speaking a language, it can be like, "Dunta sa mo so kuti ta la," kind of, it's all different. It's all flavored with the person's
Persons.
energy. So,
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, I've got a lot to.
yeah. So I just thank you for listening. Something told me just give Mary the download. She'll know what to do with it.
Yeah, well, I'll have to assimilate and work out what is important for me to take with my research as well. But it's interesting that you've had that quiet time so that you've been able to bring this all together, which suggests to me that this shift is not far off, because I think all of this is going to be really valuable.
Yes, I think what I'm shown is the shift is going to happen in a lot of different ways. And this is what I write about in this book, is, what I'm shown is that we've already made the shift. We're already in the new earth. And the only reason that we're collectively and individually experiencing what's happening in the world is because people haven't adjusted that. So it's like they're keeping that in that holding frequency. It's like a holding pattern. But what I'm also shown is that everybody is going to experience it differently. Like someone could be having a beautiful life, and next door somebody's really suffering. In our world right now, it's like that. So it's sort of like where you put your focus and your frequency. Some people may not even feel anything change, and I do believe that it's the what's called parallel realities. We're each one of us is on our own timeline, and how we're going to experience it is how we see fit, how we create it. So the more conscious you can do this, you can go that way. But you and I could be having very similar or very different experiences. But I believe it's happening now, and I also think that all these star people, they're revealing a lot of this is false ops stuff, holographic projections, but they've always been here and they're coming in and out. But I think it's like, they say like during the 40s with the nuclear bomb, they're coming back because we are doing horrible things to the earth, and it's time to change it and actively. And so they're here, and I'm being shown they're going to start walking again with people like they did in ancient times, working together, integrating in the physical. They want to come in the physical, but the earth has to be a certain vibration for them to be able to come here, because it's so dense. It's very, very hard for them to stay.
I'd like to assimilate. Yes, there's a lot I'd like to just think about. I think it's what's so inspiring too is the way that you've been able to work with all of this awareness in a very dense situation, and you've managed to retain your integrity with it, and it hasn't ultimately created the kind of difficulties that some people have had when they try to open up. I mean, I'm very close to me now is an Indigenous lady that happens to be a friend of my son's, and she's used to see the what she called the elders when she was a child. She would say the old ones and what have you, seeing spirits, all this kind of thing, but was dismissed even by her Indigenous family because they were very religious, so it wasn't okay. And she's continued to connect, and only in the last few months started to do all these codes, which she didn't know what she was doing. And she said they'd come in this way, and some would come in this way, and they're pushing me to do this, this, and this. And that when she showed me, and I said, well, that's the languages, that's the codes, and she had not a clue.
Yeah, I think so many people are doing this now. I mean, you can go on YouTube, on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, thousands and thousands of people, but I can feel the vibration immediately. I read the energy. And so for some, it's like a new toy. Oh, I can do this cool thing. And then there are others that carry a certain presence or an understanding, whether they consciously or intellectually know or not. But so many people are starting to doodle and sketch and do the symbols, the codes, and they're kind of going a little crazy because they don't know about you, they don't know about me. You know, it's hard if you're not in those circles or you're not actively pursuing that kind of stuff. But they're seeking, and it's manifesting through everyone. I mean, people that I never would think, very 3D people. I was talking to a friend of mine in New York. She's like, oh, everybody talks about light language, star people. It's not a big deal now. So, you know, there is an awakening to it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, for many, they're not sure what to make of it. They dismiss it and think, "Oh, it's just me doodling or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
And then when you know, show them examples and say, well, that's like this one, and their understanding of different intelligences coming in with different codes and what have you as well. But it's still, for a lot of people, still an unknown. They're not sure what to make of it.
Yeah.
And this is why your work is so important and what you're doing is so important, because it's normalizing, you know.
Yes.
This is all about normalizing, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
greater
I
reality.
coined a T-shirt: "Make light language is the new normal."
Well,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. But there are so many that still don't understand what it is
Mhm.
that they're doing, other than they're feeling driven to actually do it. You know, this huge energy of, I've got to do this, I've got to put it down.
Yeah,
And
it's almost like a passion that you can't stop. You know,
that's
and this
right.
is why, for me, I think I was born as an artist to an artist mother, because I approach this from an artistic perspective. I mean, I've been synesthetic all my life. I hear a sound and taste shapes and see numbers, and I feel things in my body, and you know, so that was just what I did. And I think, you know, ironically, the more I was ostracized or kind of pushed out of those circles, I'm shown I'm supposed to be on the outside. It's almost like I started on the outside of the matrix. And I think that
Yeah.
so many people, it's all conditioning and programming. And I think this is really what this time is. I mean, I think we're going through this tunnel
Yeah.
between these worlds where we're having to slough off all the programming, any message that is not uniquely from us. And so, you know, I tell people, like, people say, oh, I'm not an artist. I said, of course you are. So there's even thoughts
Yeah.
about, you know, you have to have a classical training or something like that. I am more attracted to people who are self-taught and spontaneously start to do this, you know, music,
Yeah.
art, light language, and whatever. So I approach it from a more artistic perspective. And I, you know, I was shown that the stuff that I'm doing is um it's working somehow with these codes of creation. And I have been very hesitant myself to talk openly about a lot of this stuff. You know, I'll do presentations and things, but I didn't feel safe, you know, because, you know, there are nefarious things in the world, and I'm very aware. I've gone all these rabbit holes, down all these rabbit holes. I knew what's out there, but I am shown it's time, and people are ready to, you know, have these deeper conversations. So
I think you're absolutely right. And you know, the work that you're doing is giving that extra energy to so many that are finding this and seeking answers. And the complexity of your understanding, I think, will take a while for some to understand. I mean, I do bullet points with a lot of mine because I suppose I'm speaking to this very broad audience of
yeah,
nuts and bolts of,
yep.
is this real, to those that know it's real and know their origins and know their star family and know their mission. So this broad spectrum of society, and I'm trying to find the language that will reach as many as possible without losing one or the other or whatever. So I very much see myself as doing that.
Mhm.
Whereas with yourself, the ones that are able to go to that next step are going to find your work invaluable in terms of that. You know, looking, I did a small presentation recently on the scripts, which you may or may not have seen, but I was saying what the scripts and codes are actually doing in very simplistic terms, of course, because I know it's a lot more complex than that.
Mhm.
You know, they're clearing their
Mhm.
information. There's so many things,
Mhm.
as you beautifully pointed out right at the very beginning, and I would be very interested to just see that in bullet points. You
Mhm.
know, this is all the things that
Yeah.
are happening when you bring down the codes and all
Yeah.
the rest of it. One of the things I wanted to say to you is because, as you know, I've looked at the so-called dysfunctions of ADHD, dyslexia, and autism as being new, the new human archetypes with different skills and what have you.
Yes.
I want to ask you this. One of them I've wondered about, because
Mhm.
there's so many with that, is actually bipolar.
Mhm.
Do you see that as part of one of um, the new human as well? Because I'm going to ask you this because I've been wondering about it for a bit.
Mhm.
Is so many are having it where they go manic, where
Mhm.
they feel like they can do everything. They're
Mhm.
the king of the world, as it were. And
Mhm.
then they to the one where they're at the very baseline of,
Mhm.
I don't want to be here. I don't like it. 3D is, the reality I don't want to be. What I was wondering, and it's just a wondering, and I
Mhm.
just would like your thoughts on it,
Mhm.
is are we bringing in this kind of um, what's the word I want? This kind of manifestation. But what it's really showing is they're a little bit ahead of their time, because ultimately that higher consciousness,
Mhm.
what we call the manic state, is actually their superconscious awareness that's showing what's possible, what's
Mhm.
showing that they can do these things. And this is where we're going. And that's just my thoughts on maybe and they've not yet quite manifested the balance that they need between the two.
Mhm. Yep.
I
So
don't know.
I'm shown that this I've had experiences with it, which I think some of that may even run in my family, chemically, energetically, or whatever. But this fluctuation between, there's a fine line between genius and crazy. Our artistic genius, musical genius, and you really do tap into these dimensions. And this has honestly been my work in my own life. I mean, I'm
Mm,
pummeled with this stuff, like, and it knocks me out. I can feel pressure in my body. It almost incapacitates me for hours,
mm,
days, and weeks, and then I'm fine again. So I'm actually training. It's like I'm in my own self-initiated, Ascension school training of how to manage these frequencies. So I still go up and down and have moods. And so people that are the bipolar, to me, as I've understood it, and again, I don't study a lot of these things. It's like the messages I get or how I feel or what I pick up when I see people in that state. So there's a whole spectrum, as you know, when they say they're on or off the spectrum. I have a different chart in my own reference. So I think a couple things are happening there. One is that they are operating on such a high dimension, and then they come down here. So when they're flying high, it's like their heads in the sky and they're having these phenomenal experiences, and then they have to come back in the body. So they're doing it consciously, or even a part of their brain is like shifting. So that is really, really challenging. It's like seeing the most incredible sunset you've ever seen and then going back into darkness. So and it's really dense here. So what I understand is people that are bipolar are trying to find this balance between these two, but it's like going in and out of dimensions.
yeah.
So the manic stuff happens because they have this surge of energy. So when you see ADHD, ADD, the neurotic stuff happens when people get hooked into a pattern that they can't get out of. And
Mm,
usually, what I found, a lot of it is past lifetime stuff. They get stuck um, on some kind of treadmill that relates to some emotion that they don't want to feel. It's like people that have gone through severe trauma. If you show
mm,
them any picture or image or anything that reminds them of that thing, they don't want to deal with it, but they'll go back, and it's all in the subconscious. So a lot of these are behavior patterns that I've been shown that people come in with genetically, I mean, it's even in their genes, and it's chemical. So they have to find a way to do this. I think what's really important to say is I think that what I've been shown is that every problem that a person has, whether it's minor or life changing, health, dynamics, abuse, whatever, all this, their higher self made a contractual agreement to come into the physical to experience what this is. And it's very, very challenging for people, oh, well, you think the people that are suffering, on the street, don't have this or that. I think all these things are arrangements that we've made somehow to come in and have this experience. So those people that are vibrating, they're vibrating between these different spectrums and they don't know how to do it. It's like, I'm trying to think of an example. It's like having two wardrobes, and you've got your dress up clothes and your casual clothes, but you're going to a function and you have no idea what's happening at the function. So which do I wear? And I don't want to show up with, a lot of this too is internal judgment. Like, I don't want to appear crazy, or I don't want to, the people that function that way in all these levels of the spectrum, there's something going on in there. And it's almost like a fear that it's going to blow up. I mean, this is what I experienced because of the energy that I was feeling. My body, I wasn't hyper, but I was like super intense. And I had to literally do this to myself and keep my energy harnessed, in a certain way. So I would, explode when I just bring it back to me to give you an example. So when I paint, when I get really into a certain zone, I'm ambidextrous, I'm ferocious. I paint like 2 paintings or 3 paintings at once. So what happens with a lot of the bipolar is their human part is frustrated because they feel they can't control the brain, or like, it's spontaneously is going to come out. So there's that. There's all the cultural norms of whatever anybody has said to them. Oh, you're too wild. You're too, you're psychotic, or what, those naming things. But I think that, yes, they're coming from a different dimension. Like I said, they're up there coming down to here, which we all are, but we're starting to know. So they're awakened. They're already at the next level, So that's
what,
yeah. And so they're here, just like the kids with ADHD. They're agitated in their body because they need to move, because up there they're moving around. This is so dense for them. All the kids that I work with, including my little friend who is amazing, their mind is racing so fast. They pick up things really, really quickly, and they're completely bored with everything. They don't understand why this world is the way it is. It just does not make sense. Why do we have buildings? Why do people go to jobs? What is money? Why do we have to sit down to eat? I mean, anything and everything seems to be challenging. And then if you've got a parent who is trying to, follow the rules and go that way, they suppress it, and they get most of that, I think, is emotional suppression from outside forces. People telling them they're wrong, or something's wrong with them, or that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Okay, well, that's very helpful.
Yeah.